Hello and welcome back to The Dive, the finals episode. I'm Jack, joined by Kobe, Azael, and special guest Papasmithy.
Hello.
Because the finals is in Korea.
That's
so
true.
You must have the Korean analyst.
We did have to try and find innovative ways to justify the conclusion, but I'm here, damn it, I'm here.
Don't worry, we're very used to having to justify our inclusion as well.
Anyways, this World Championship has actually been amazing, especially the quarterfinals. And then I feel like everyone was actually a little bit let down at the semifinals in the fact that it was a double 3-0 with totally dominating performances by IG and Fnatic. So let's start there. What do you think of the semifinals?
I mean, it's kind of what you expect sometimes, going into the quarterfinals, right? It's like, oh, okay, great, the Western team got out or whatever, and now they get slammed by the Korean team, and that didn't happen at all, obviously, in the quarterfinals. The semifinals were very one-sided. I think they certainly had the potential to be closer series, but both G2 and Cloud9 got completely blasted. Mm-hmm. They looked outclassed, and while it is disappointing as North American to see that Cloud9 got beat that badly, I am excited because this says these are the best two teams going into the finals very clearly. There's no doubt about it. We already saw 3 exciting games from these guys in groups as well, and now we're going to be treated to a best of 5.
I think my big takeaway from this tournament is it's been very hard to update expectations based on results. There's been a lot of results like Cloud9 3-0ing Africa, where I look at that, I try to stare at it, and honestly, you might go blind like you do staring into the sun when you try to take too much from just one best of 5 or even one day's play. It feels like updating your opinion should be informed by results, but you have to also temper expectation because we've had some crazy results this tournament.
Yeah, we've been looking at all these games over the course of the tournament and picking out reasons for why there's so much variation, and a lot of it does come down to the increased importance on individual play. Junglers and solo laners especially have been so dominant, one way or another. If you have a couple of good plays in the early game, it allows these solo laners on a lot of these assassin picks and snowballing picks to be able to control objectives super well for the remainder of the game. Not to say bottom lane is not important at all anymore, but the way that you start out a lot of these games is through the top side of the map.
Yeah, I think that was on the most display during semifinals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we saw instances of this throughout the tournament, and the fact that we have nearly twice as many solo kills in Worlds 2018 than we had in Worlds 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's made Worlds very exciting, is the fact that individual outplays almost feel like they're back, like they were back in Season 3. But specifically, when you have both IG and Fnatic first picking LeBlanc, being like, okay, you can take Lissandra. We're confident it's not going to be able to contain it. We even had Fnatic blind picking Victor and telling you exactly where it's going to go, right? Like Cloud9 ended up flexing it down bottom lane, but for Fnatic, it was very clearly top lane. And Licorice didn't have a good answer. He thought he had a good answer in Echo, but it just ended up not working out. So in those instances, or even, I'm sorry, just like the IG game, the difference between Aatrox matchups, like the fact that TheShy was just had the ability to win every Aatrox matchup so hard, those felt like the series deciding things. Like it's not necessarily how skilled you are in draft phase, like outsmarting them and putting together the perfect team composition. It's like, no, my player dominates every side of this champion as or against, so therefore I win. And I felt like that was the case in the semifinals.
And I think when you take tanks more out of the equation, as they kind of were in some of these semifinals, you can get very one-sided results because it's much more high variance, right? When you have a carry versus carry, one guy gets slammed, as we saw happen a bunch of times. Like when you're looking at the Jace matchups in the IG series, both in mid lane and top lane, you're removing your opponent from that game, almost entirely with the performances that are that dominant. There's just not a lot of ways to come back into a game as Aatrox, who's down like 60 CS, getting dove over and over. And I think that's something that, has kind of been pretty different from the past, where we saw a lot more tanks, a lot more of kind of like a slower playstyle, control mages in the mid lane, tanks in the top lane, scaling marksmen, all this sort of stuff. When you talk about like Ardent Sensor meta from last year, it was so much harder for teams, I think, to dominate in the same way. It was much more of kind of like a slow choke out from the game in the past.
Even though there has been some slow elements, it's been very quick to know who's in control and where the game is likely to go. And kind of what I was struck by, just thinking back on what do I make of, all the gameplay up to semis, is that it felt like until this year, there was kind of a rubric or a guideline on how to watch a League of Legends game and how it would play out, especially last year because the meta ended up being so firm. You felt like every game eventually a ward would be pushed behind the bot lane turret. A top laner that was a tank usually would come and teleport down and threaten a dive. The first turret would go down and the game would play out through the bot lane being unleashed on the map. And while there have been games like that, you think of some of G2's victories with Jin, Tahm Kench and things like that, it feels like more and more games have been much more about solo lane advantages, solo kill advantages, games snowballing purely from one item assassins being able to really dive just a solo, right? They don't need a coordinated top lane to bot lane play that involved the jungler. It's just LeBlanc goes top lane and goodbye enemy top lane, you're dead. And that's just been so different. And that's why I think there's this kind of big community perception about how the game is right now, how Worlds has been, the quality of the games, as if you can give it a 5-star rating in terms of a movie. It's just very, very different. And we're having to, I think, as a casting team and just thinking about the game in just different ways and kind of updating our understanding because the games have been noticeably different in style to the last 2-3 years.
I would say also, I like the increased focus on forced mistakes because people have been talking a lot. Yeah, there have been a lot of mistakes in a lot of these games, individual as well as team play. But also a lot of them are being forced because a lot of these teams are making kind of percentage plays and then committing very hard to them and putting people in situations where they have to have these quick reactions. So that's one thing. As well, just because the semifinals were so one-sided, don't want people to forget the beginning of this tournament where there were actually a lot of comebacks. So even though semifinals, both of these were 3-0s, and you had this feeling for most of both of those series where, IG and Fnatic had really strong holds on both of them. Building up to this, we had a tremendous amount of even people that are facing, let's say a Fed Aurelia or a Fed LeBlanc, like up 3 kills or something like that, continuing to try and force fights and try and go after the bounty and actually making good use of that money and being able to turn it around. So that has been the other factor to me that has made it not overwhelmingly like, oh my God, it's just this broken champion taking over the game. As soon as you get one kill on Akali or Aurelia or LeBlanc or any of these things, then the game is over. Exactly. That has definitely not been the case.
Yeah, exactly. Even in the semifinals, game 3 of G2 IG, G2 had a 2,500 gold lead at 15 minutes and a 3-0 Aurelia top lane, right? And then they lost. And in the quarterfinals, EDG had a 5,000 or 7,000 gold lead on Fnatic, and Fnatic drew out a 47-minute win. So I think that's the other thing that's contributing to it is you still see the variance in game length, and it's not just a pure snowball method.
Yeah, both of these semifinals were this one-sided because Fnatic and Invictus Gaming were that much better than their opponents. And not kind of so much of this other.
Yeah, like I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I had gotten a number of tweets and people were asking me like what I thought about. Oh, like it feels like all the game is now is who gets the better matchup in the solo lanes and they win kind of thing. And I was like, well, I actually really disagreed with that just because it felt like it was much more about player skill. When you look at like Echo was supposed to be the Victor counter, and that certainly you can talk about. Yes, Caps roaming up and Broxah playing better around top and whatever, but like that's the winning matchup that lost both times. When you look at Akali into Swain, that was supposed to be a losing matchup. When you looked at the Aatrox game into Aurelia, that was supposed to be a losing matchup, and everything went wrong from at the start, and yet all of those players found ways to win. And I think it really was impressive to see that people were able to find ways to come back from extremely difficult situations, especially the Shy game on Aatrox, where it's like his jungler gives over a kill knowing that they were topside, knowing that they could be coming up, walks in, face checks, gives up a kill, which means that he's now screwed. He gets dove without TP. He's losing everything. It's like he got put in such a losing situation in a losing matchup and still carried that game almost.
I think the reality, though, is there's a lot of agency with a lot of the meta picks. You go back to the 5 champions, Bwipo was labeling as overpowered and being traded. Things like Aurelia, LeBlanc, Akali, Aatrox, Urgot, a lot of them flex picks. The LeBlanc now on first pick.
Now Victor even.
And the Victor will be up there as well. There's champions that can take over games, and that's a very noticeable thing. And the reason why I bring it up is before it was very much a low, medium risk for high reward meta in previous ones, Ardent Sensor especially. And now there is high rewards out there for taking medium to high risk that can take over games in a very meaningful way. But it's not just you got 2 kills, 3 kills on Aurelia, the game is over. It just means that that person suddenly, if they're set up to succeed, has a massive agency almost instantly at 15 minutes over the game at 1 or 2 items. And from there, the game time has come down because the game feels decided around that pick if played perfectly. Just like in the past, certain macro setups and defensive wards might mean that the game feels unwinnable for the enemy team. Now you just have item advantages that can be set up in terms of a 4-1 or a 1-3-1 that can simulate the old times, but the method to get there is more destructive. It's more explosive. And honestly, that's not necessarily a bad thing given just how kind of slow and how the game state had been fairly predictable for a few years.
And these advantages that you can get in draft are very real, but it's so much more important, I feel like, how the junglers are also influencing a lot of these matches, because you can definitely get a big advantage in draft phase and have a good plan going into the game. But so much of the way that these games have gone have also not just been these individual matchups and solo laners have been so amazing, has been a lot due to, junglers having good decision making. And you talk about these, early plays, especially, they can go a long way in changing how a matchup, percentage chances are actually supposed to go.
Yeah, and even I know Azale and I were talking during one of the games where the Echo versus Victor matchup was at a point where like both Echo and Victor were at 20% health,
both with no TP.
mana and no TP, and it's like as soon as one jungler shows up, this lane is over.
Yep.
And here comes Broxah, right? Svenskaren's killing like Gromp or something at the time, and that can be the difference. And that's team play, right? That's what is making this exciting. But I do want to move forward a bit to the matchup at hand, like the final 2 teams standing amongst all of this. One thing that I find really cool about this that isn't necessarily gameplay related is just how both Fnatic and IG have been orgs for so long. They like predate the Korean dominance of League of Legends. So it's almost fitting that in the year that Korea falters, these are the teams that meet in the finals. Like I brought up during World's Cooldown, IPL 5 with Rekkles, I feel like his first big tournament with Fnatic, when he couldn't even play with Fnatic the next year in 2013 because of the LCS age restrictions. He was 16 years old at IPL 5. And the reason this tournament felt significant to so many people is it had the defending world champions in TPA. It did have a Korean team in Azubu Blaze. It didn't have Azubu Frost or like a large swath of Korean teams, but Fnatic did super well. They made it all the way to the finals. And they fell to Team WE, the Chinese team, right? And this is a different Chinese team, but at the same time, it is also the year where China has won everything, has the chance to sweep, has the chance to solidify themselves as the #1 region, or you have the returning Season 1 world champions getting it. Like that is just, it's so cool that it is these 2 specific regions battling it out again.
It's a very ripe narrative, but I don't know if all our viewers appreciate just how divergent the paths are of Fnatic in Europe and Invictus Gaming in China. Because before I was casting LCK, I was very much involved with the Chinese region, even before LPL and kind of the very early days. And I'm surrounded by NA casters, so this analogy will definitely hit. There was a time in NA when it was CLG or TSM. Those were your battle lines, right, when it came to fandom. We're talking 2012, 2011.
Pre-LCS.
Even the early days when you were a player, Kobe, like it was very much
those
one
were
or the other,
the
right?
first 2 teams.
They were the first 2 teams. And you chose one, and it kind of went around there. WE and IG were those 2 teams, again, pre-LPL era, very much early days. And if you want to apply like which one is the TSM and which one is the CLG, you definitely say that IG was the CLG side, specifically under the lens of, let's think back to the big final, right? MSG final, CLG versus TSM. Think of that era where CLG had always been really big, but never won anything significant on the LCS era. IG is that team still today, having never won a domestic title. The only title I remember them winning, I actually cast an online tournament called the Stars War League. Not related with Star Wars.
Stars War.
You guys are getting me all nostalgic
that's
with
right.
all these.
That was pre-season 2
old
of Worlds.
That's pre-season 2. So that was after season 2 was Taipei Assassins were in that tournament.
Okay, I probably got
did not
Stars
win.
Wars 7 and Stars Wars 8.
Again, there was a lot of things going on. But the fact that we're talking about these pre-LCS era days lets you know that this was, again, one of those really big orgs that were supposed to be favorites, couldn't do it, didn't win. The LPL started in spring season. They won the regular season, couldn't win the entire thing. they're still going. So they're still, as if CLG never found success, they are this org that has been around for so long. So for them to be, in many minds, the champions-elect, the favorites for the final, despite having underperformed for 7-8 calendar years, is like an insane thing for us to now have them as this favorites. And I'm sure their Chinese long-term fans are losing their minds at the chance that they are away from Fnatic, who instead are that royalty of Europe in spite of those 2 years of struggle recently.
Did you have something, Kobe?
I was just talking about the nostalgia that you guys were eliciting in me. When you started talking about IPL 5, the first thing that came up in my head was how broken Rengar was.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my goodness.
From World Elite, just running circles around the whole
Tank
map.
Rengar.
Tank Rengar.
He didn't even have to build damage.
Like
he would still kill
60%
everyone.
win rate, just go invisible like for the whole game.
Yeah.
I remember that. And I also, from like a nostalgia point of view, you talked about the path of IG, even the path of Fnatic kind of rebuilding their team so many times. Yes, they were the big European org, but I remember I don't know exactly what it was called, but it was the qualification tournament for the European LCS.
Yes.
It was like this big group stage and a bracket stage, and Fnatic was a game away from being eliminated in that tournament, and it was tense. You're like, this is one of the biggest teams in European LCS history. They might not make the LCS, so they were close to not even making the LCS in the first place. Then they go on that dominant run at the start of LCS, basically winning everything with Peke and Pushu and Soaz, and it's kind of a shame, actually, that Rekkles couldn't play in the 2013 World Championship because he wasn't old enough to play in the European LCS.
That was like EU rules, right? Because obviously some of it's like Uzi, for example, was also underage at the time.
Because that's how
the rules were different.
That's how
back then.
undefined the scene was, right? EU and NALCS had age restrictions of 17 years old, which I think is correct. But at the time, the LPL didn't. So I believe that the powers that be didn't want to say, oh, you have this team the whole year in the LPL, but no, you can't take the same players to Worlds. So Uzi in the Season 1 World Championship was like 15 or 16, Season 3, sorry.
Yep.
15 or 16 years old. Anyway, now that Fnatic, I feel like, has replaced Peke with Caps in the grand scheme of things, they have another world-class...
Very different people.
Another world-class dominant mid laner to pair up with a reliable AD carry like Rekkles and refound that success. Anyway, it's ripe with history.
We have a Season 1 finalist returning, but obviously Soaz at the time was not on Fnatic. He was on Against All Authority.
And we have a 2015 champion also in the sub top lane role for IG.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit bittersweet for both Soaz and Duke. We saw Soaz tweeting about it and kind of his mixed emotions, which some people didn't like, but it kind of resonated with me. Like I can understand that feeling. Like as a competitor, him feeling kind of mixed because it's like, okay, you made World Finals, you're on the team that did it, this is an incredible accomplishment, but you watched your team do this, you were not on the field. He helped them to get there, and he helped out that whole way, and that is gotta feel somewhat frustrating or somewhat kind of confusing almost, like as you're not sure how to quite feel about it. And similarly for Duke, right? Like everyone is talking about TheShy after their series against G2, and no one's mentioning poor old Duke who's sitting on the bench. And it'll be interesting to see if those guys do actually come in at all for the finals, because they do obviously offer some different play styles and could change things up quite a lot. But both Bwipo and TheShy look so good in the quarterfinals that it feels like you're certainly at the very least expecting them to be the starters.
Yeah, I think we can jump right in to the role by role matchup for this game. Like let's go with top lane, which has been a hugely evolving role throughout the World Championship. We started with every top lane matchup being the Urgot versus Aatrox skill check. Which one do you think is better? We feel like since we can match it with, Urgot or Aatrox, we're not going to ban it. That was like the play-in meta. And it slowly evolved to the fact that Aatrox is this scary thing to pick because there's 4 different potential counters.
And Urgot's just banned.
Urgot's either banned or it actually went through a draft phase in the Fnatic versus C9 game, but I agree, like usually just banned.
Yeah.
And then we have this whole other wide array of picks from Jace to Victor to Echo. Like, what do you think of this matchup, Shy versus Bwipo?
I mean, it's super hype in many different ways. The meta does allow for a lot of those different things. At the end of the day, the Urgot doesn't seem answerable as easily as Aatrox because the Victor, of course, came up as a really easy answer into it, and there's other things that work situationally. You can farm out against Urgot, but most teams don't want to deal with it, so that gets banned away. But if we're zooming in on the players, I think we should talk about the fact that, again, Bwipo now seems cemented as the starter. kind of a surprise to see him from the second round robin, I guess, of the group stage, but it made sense to give him some time.
It's a rookie.
But then
it's insane.
It is a rookie, but then he firmed as a starter by quarters into semis, and I think Bwipo coming of age is this thing that really cements Fnatic as a kind of real squad that can kind of manage the expectations of the meta whichever ways it goes, because they still have SOAS. They still know how to play around a very reliable tank player who can play the Scion and can allow them to play the same sort of turret dives that you play in more ordered meta, let's say, in this kind of chaos or like destructive meta we have right now. You need someone who can play these matchups in the top lane, the carry matchups, and that's exactly what Bwipo provides, and it really fills out the squad. I don't know what will happen next year, but having both SOAS and Bwipo as available starters, and both of them have compelling reasons to come in, really elevates Fnatic, who have lots of other parts of their game we'll talk about. But the specific matchup of what happens when 1v1 Bwipo goes against TheShy, you have to feel like the best of TheShy is going to be something really difficult to deal with for a young player, for a player who's still new to this kind of a stage. But TheShy himself doesn't have that many games behind him, but
True.
You still look at some of those individual plays, and if it ends up being an isolated top lane somehow, we're going to have a treat to watch.
I'm just so excited for that matchup because both of them are so confident in their play, and it's very clear why Fnatic are using Bwipo as the starter.
Meta
Exactly. There's so much power in these champions, as we've kind of been discussing. Game isn't over once you get a bunch of kills, but you definitely have a lot of power to dictate how the game is going to go. And I think that both the teams are going to keep those two players. As you're saying, though, for Bwipo doing this and being a rookie, like in his rookie year, is actually so insane.
Yep.
Making it all the way to world finals and playing against TheShy, who has definitely demonstrated already and proven on the world stage that he is kind of what we thought Khan was going to be in years past. This top lane matchup is incredibly insane. I think that almost every matchup, actually, as we go down the list for this series, is going to be very exciting, but especially the solo lanes with how the junglers are going to, route around the early game here.
Yeah.
Just one game could go completely in Bwipo's favor, and then you could have a completely different situation in game number 2.
Like, I mean, I think going into this, like, I'm looking at Shy as the best top laner in the world, and I think that makes it, even more exciting with how confident and how well Bwipo has played. To have, I think, arguably the most impressive rookie year of all time. If he wins this World Finals, right? If he comes in, he wins here, and you beat the person that most people are looking at as the best top laner, best performing top laner right now in the World Finals. I think that makes like such a statement and is so incredibly exciting. And I do think that TheShy, though, has been so flexible and has shown so many different champions that he can bring out, and like I feel like he is going to be able to have the advantage in the matchup.
Yeah. I will say really quickly that Bwipo did play in the LCL prior to joining Fnatic, so it's his like Worlds debut. He was outstanding rookie to EU LCS. I like the analogy for anyone who watched baseball 10 years ago, his Ichiro rookie year, because Ichiro is a baseball player in Japan and then came over to the Mariners. Anyway.
But stay on it for a tiny bit longer, because think about it like this. Also, he is a rookie that's replacing SOAS. What other like team do you have a situation like that where they have two extremely like good top laners that could perform
Duke
on the world stage?
And TheShy.
Yeah, exactly. You can think of one.
It's actually a similar situation, and I want to add one little thing that I noticed, like when I watched TheShy lane, which is kind of why I agree with you, Azael, that. And even Papasmithy, when you say like the best version of TheShy, just feels completely unbeatable.
Yeah.
More so than any other player, he always has control of his champion. So like when I specifically watched him play Aatrox, like Aatrox has a fairly exaggerated like auto attack animation. The instant he was last hitting, he was canceling the follow through, right? And when you're that precise with how you cancel your auto attacks, every single time you're technically running the risk of just checking your auto and not even swinging, which is why some people just let it completely complete, or they're a little bit slower on their cancel. But it felt like 100% of the time, the instant he was getting the last hit, he was canceling the follow through and just maintaining movement control of his character.
And it definitely gave you a bit more perspective on Smeb's tournament, because I think a lot of people have been pretty critical of Smeb here. You know, I'm sure when people start talking about Dade Award, which we still haven't awarded, it does feel like someone who was right up there and didn't necessarily impress as much, but he really struggled in that quarterfinal against TheShy. But having the perspective of how TheShy was able to just kind of dispatch his opponent so ruthlessly against Wunder in the semifinals kind of gives you perspective on just how much laning power he has, and the fact that he wasn't able to be exploited almost at all is really impressive and just sets a very high bar. And you think about Bwipo as a player, and definitely a lot of his kind of mechanical understandings and his ability to play aggressive and his willingness to means he shapes up, at least on paper, well against TheShy. But if we come away from the World Final with TheShy as MVP just running over Bwipo, it wouldn't be a big surprise either. It's just the kind of now, just like I was talking about with, all right, Cloud9 beat Afrika, how do we judge Cloud9? TheShy was so dominant in that semifinal that you're ready to just anoint him as like on a different level.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously everyone who watched semifinals knows that like his team fighting is really good. His individual 1v1s and his mechanics are incredible. But one of the things that always really impresses me is how he actually controls the wave in carry matchups. Like he's so smart about where he's holding the wave, when he's pushing, when he's freezing, like when he's actually trying to pull the minions. You very often see him from level 1 stacking the minions so it'll like pull slowly towards him, and he'll try to have like it held just outside of his turret range to set up for ganks. And like his wave manipulation is so incredibly good, and that's one of the most important things in carry versus carry matchups, and especially in some of the really lane dominant matchups like Jace. If you can actually like hold the wave outside of your turret, you can essentially be zoning them more from just gold, but even from experience at times where you're actually standing in between them and the wave. And like he just seems to always do that right, which is really impressive to me, because it makes it so incredibly hard then to actually come back in a matchup when someone is always perfectly managing the wave from an already like having an advantage. And he's a very smart carry player, as well as obviously extremely talented.
Something I like with both of them was their positioning in setting up for 1v1s, and their planning for knowing exactly what your opponent is going to try and go for next. So for TheShy, he very clearly has very good dodging, where he'll keep the mouse extremely close to the character model to keep the small movements so that he can just barely get outside of the skill shot hitbox.
Like the Jace orb walking with W.
Like the Jace orb walking, or it was on Jace as well, where he dodged the Aurelia ultimate.
Yep.
Looking for the animation constantly going backwards. And Bwipo I thought he played especially the Victor Echo matchup really well, because there's a mind game between the two delayed CC circles that both these champions have, right? And he would constantly put himself, forward on the edge of the Echo possible stun that's going to come in, but also overlap it with his gravity field to kind of negate the one area that would overlap a stun here for himself, to also get himself disengaged. So to be able to do that in these high pressure matchups where it's assassins looking for kills, you're constantly looking for all ins, and you have the added variable of junglers and being able to juggle that. I thought both of these guys have done good jobs of that. So that's why I'm like so excited to see how it plays out. But we should probably move on then.
So we're going to see San versus Ornn then, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see victory. My one takeaway here, because actually IG banned it all 3 games against G2. And that seems like the one pick with Bwipo where he just looked flawless.
There is a week though, right? So, there is more time to prepare for this.
Victor's a 3-way flex. Maybe it's actually not a mid lane flex, but it's at least a top lane, bot lane flex as far as we can see. So I can see IG just perma-banning that one.
Yeah.
When it comes to TheShy, for me, it's a lot about him as a player rather than necessarily a single pick. There's not one pick I can think of apart from the Jace, but that's a flex pick. That's quintessentially get rid of this And with Bwipo, it's still potential that he has new picks to show that can simulate that. But I definitely, when I'm thinking about bans, see the Victor 100% on the ban list for IG.
Specifically at the World Championship, we've seen Bwipo play Victor. TheShy has not played Victor. Bwipo's also played Ornn and Swain 3 times. TheShy has not played it. But TheShy has played Fiora twice, which is really the only guy to play Fiora. And he's looked good on both, even though they didn't win.
And Ornn and Swain aren't necessarily picks for dominating lane. The Swain can do well, but neither of them is going to solo kill and get turret pressure very reliably. So for TheShy, you can think of Jace, you can think of Fiora, you can think of other aggressive picks. I'm interested to see where Bwipo goes next when it comes to, say, turret threat and 1v1 ability.
This is a situation where I'm going to just be tracking solo queue because I actually think we're going to see some of the counter picks will get tracked there. We spent a lot of time on the top lane because I think
There's
like
4 players
the last
top
stage
lane.
of the World Championship, not only are there 4 players, but the top lane and the mid lane I feel like are the most important lanes. But jungle also influences those lanes greatly.
Top is jungle difference.
And we got, Broxah,
Classic.
who has had an amazing tournament, really solidifying himself as one of the world's top junglers. And we also have Ning, who, while he was voted the best jungler in the LPL on first team, has a lot of inconsistencies within the LPL and at the World Championship. He had the most kills and the most deaths in the LPL regular season. He's had some great games at the World Championship. I remember the Infinity Edge Kindred game actually did amazing work, but he still has some of those big head-scratching moments in the early game. So what are your thoughts on this Ning versus Broxah jungle matchup?
I think it's pretty Broxah sided. Like just based on the performance, I think Broxah has, you could at least say, looked the best out of any jungler at Worlds. I think he has been not only someone who has had extremely high highs, but he seems to just perform very consistently. Like he is always looking for gank attempts. His pathing is smart. Like he seems to be fairly bulletproof, which is pretty impressive, because oftentimes when you have the guys that do pull off these super crazy plays, it is more of the like MLXGs or the Nings who are, you're going to get some of that, but you're also going to get some of this kind of thing. And he seems to have been able to put together like a set of games at Worlds where there's not really a ton to criticize from. And
Agreed.
And I think it's extremely impressive to see his, like, how much he has evolved as a player. You know, we were kind of talking about this earlier, where it's like he came into the scene, he's looking, you know, kind of average, and then he started looking pretty good, and now he's like, well, he does everything. He plays Lee Sin the best, and he's getting like quadra kills on Rek'Sai, and he's really consistent. And okay, well, yeah, you're
I just think he has been outstanding.
Yeah.
Broxah has been an insane jungler, because you're talking about having head-scratching moments, and oftentimes because jungle has so much versatility and like there's all these variables, there's going to be some games where you got outpathed early, or you know the enemy had 2 pushing lanes in this area, and you know everything got counter jungled on one side, right? So you're behind. But there, not only has there not been you know, these head-scratching moments where you're criticizing him, but there has been also a ton of praise-worthy games from him. Absolutely insane ones where he carries extremely hard.
including against IG.
The Lee Sin ones are going to be, you know, front page YouTube highlights. But also, I like the ones where even the most recent, right, versus Cloud9. Svenskeren, he's on the Xin Zhao. He has pushing lane, so he's coming for this invade, pushes Broxah, you know, off to the other side of the map, so he has to go all the way back down to, you know, do Raptor camps. And then he still finds an opening, takes over control of mid lane, and allows then Caps to also roam. So he really enables, you know, one of the main early power points for his team, even while having to deal with offensive pressure from opponents. And that is one of the biggest things with jungle is, you know, not to have kind of a clouded judgment when you're facing pressure, because there's always going to be pressure from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, even in that one game, just a small little thing, you know, it's like when he did get invaded by, you know, he's losing his red and stuff, he rushes to his blue and takes his blue before Sven can actually get over there. Because Svenskeren, I think, was expecting him to go to Wolves first, then go to blue and meet him there with a red buff and perhaps kill him. And like, he does seem to be able to very quickly adapt to bad situations and kind of find the way out.
And I'm willing to make strong statements. If I'm IG, my #1 bullet point for how do we win this best of 5 against Fnatic is curtail Broxah's involvement. Try to control him as much as possible. I actually think that's the most important player for them to target. And of course, Fnatic have these big carries, right? Everyone knows about Caps, Rekkles, the late game insurance. All those things are true, but I think Broxah is the ability for those things to happen. I think his early game is the reason that Caps is able to be sometimes too aggressive, but in general, an aggressive, assertive player that wants to assert his will on the mid lane. And also the reason that the game can extend at times to the point where Rekkles can really come online on Sivir and take over a game. Whenever we think of Fnatic, we talk about how even when they're losing kills around the map is still in a really organized state where they're not going to lose or balloon a gold lead. We're not seeing them fall 8,000 gold behind after 3 or 4 kills have happened a couple of times in the early game. And I think the jungler is the first step towards organizing vision and map control, and this is where we're strong and this is where we're weak. I think back to EDG Fnatic in game number 1 where Broxah's Elise in that game was just completely shut down, and that was the one game where Caps was getting caught in mid lane a lot, where everything fell apart, and that felt very comfortable for EDG. And that was the one game where Broxah had no ability to skirmish the enemy jungler. He was warded wherever he went and wasn't able to exert himself. So I think everything falls into place because of just how amazing Broxah has been this tournament. Maybe one of the best jungle performances in Worlds we've ever had in terms of just how consistently good they are. And to the point we're talking about, of course, we've had IG Fnatic 3 times already. The 2 games on the same day that went to get 2 wins in a row for Fnatic in group stage was Broxah just completely smashing Ning. That was definitely the most one-sided matchup, was the jungle matchup.
Yeah, I think in the IG versus Fnatic games that we've seen in the past, it was the jungle support AD positions that is what really gave Fnatic the edge. Before we finish out the jungle matchup, I just want to talk about the difference in champion pools. Ning, 4 Camille games, 2 Gragas games. Broxah has 0 of those. We talk a lot during Champ Select about Ning's effective champion pool. We think, okay, if you get rid of Xin Zhao and Camille, he's probably not going to play Zac because it's too late game. His Gragas doesn't look that good, and his Lee Sin looks pretty bad. And we don't necessarily have the same talks about Broxah. He hasn't necessarily been targeted, but he actually has had a fairly small working champion pool because he's just locked in his Xin Zhao, which isn't a bad thing, and his Lee Sin is so great. But when you do talk about that one game that was bad when he was pushed to the Elise, you wonder if that's an area where IG might try and attack. There's so many different directions you can go in this game, but if you talk about thinking the key for IG in this matchup is to control Broxah, it might start with just pushing him off of this pure tournament comfort, which is those 2 champions in Xin Zhao and Lee Sin.
A small shout out to Ning before, again, we talk about anything else, is that, again, we were saying these are his 2 picks. Don't know about the rest. You can say that in their 3-0, he played Lee Sin, Taliyah, Jarvan. So he did show new stuff. I thought his Taliyah and Jarvan were both very clean.
I think his Lee Sin game as well. He's
really
had
good,
some bad ones, but that one was really
a
good.
step up.
So yeah.
And to be fair, he also has like 17 unique champions played this year, right? So it's not that he's never played any others. Those were certainly his preferences.
Champion pool and
I do
effective
agree.
champion is, of course, that.
For sure. And it is then, a discussion of
Judgment
like,
calls and stuff
exactly.
like that.
And, one bad game does not necessarily mean he's not good at Lee, as he obviously showed he could play in the quarterfinals. But I really agree with you that I think Broxah, and I would even add in controlling support in Hylissang, because like when you look at how they played previously, Rookie, yes, Caps did blind pick as mid laner in all 3 of those games, but Rookie was like handling Caps.
See, the mid lane discussion that I'm sure Jat's going to usher us to is going to be an interesting.
You should take us there right now.
Yeah, I mean, we can go there because it's like I do think that when you start to talk about the mid lane, and you have to look at those 3 matchups, and yes, it was 3 blind picks from Caps, but Rookie was dominating that mid lane, and it wasn't Caps winning in the 1v1. It was Fnatic's superior team play in the groups that really turned that lane around from a place where Rookie was up 30, sometimes even edging into 40 CS, getting a 1v2 kill in the LeBlanc game. But Fnatic did a much better job of bringing pressure from elsewhere on the map and supporting Caps, and then Caps kind of paid that back tenfold as the game went later and once he caught up. But that becomes so much about how the other people are doing, right? Because if you can isolate that lane, if you can have it just be pure Rookie versus Caps based on what we've seen, you have to favor Rookie. And you have to then be able to track Broxah, as you're saying, and not allow Broxah to come in and affect that. Now, not allow Fnatic to have the pushing lane, so Hylissang can't just roam up and try to attack that as well. And one of the things I did see in the IG versus G2 series was a higher priority on vision and controlling around mid lane. And I felt like that was somewhat as a result of what had happened to them in the Fnatic series. There was much more emphasis on getting like multiple pinks around Rookie. We saw like, one of the games where it was G2 having a pushing lane, there was actually 3 IG pinks around mid lane, like essentially on the right side of mid lane to protect from roams coming up from the bottom lane, from Wooded, who was trying to kind of emulate that same sort of style that we saw from Hylissang. So I think I have seen IG learn somewhat from the kind of how they fall prey to Fnatic, and I think that vision battle and who can kind of control those extra factors is going to become so big because the solo lanes from IG are so damn talented that you just feel like if you can keep it into a true 1v1, it has to be looking like it's in their favor.
Do you think we'll see LeBlanc? Or
yes,
because there's so many things you feel like you have to ban sometimes, right? But we saw LeBlanc as an Aurelia counter, which worked very well for Rookie. But then eventually we saw Caps and Rookie both willing to just first pick it. And we were kind of having this discussion last night. The LeBlanc just feels so strong in the hands of either Caps or Rookie. Like the fact that specifically we were wondering how Caps landed that chain in the top lane gank when he killed Echo, and it's like he was just point blanking his distortion and putting the chain model like in the opponent. That's how they got first blood on Lissandra. That's how they got the gank top. Like both of these guys' command of LeBlanc just feels so high. So your answer was yes. Why will we see LeBlanc and it will not just be banned?
So LeBlanc is kind of unique when it comes to these OP picks we talk about, because almost all the other ones are flex picks, right? They can go top or mid lane, whereas LeBlanc is that pure mid laner. There really is few matchups that you can go into it that you can categorically win the lane. And if you're going to go for a super win lane pick, it's going to definitely not be a flex pick. And when it comes to containment picks, which we've largely seen that kind of try and fit the meta with some strong engage, things say Lissandra, for example, has been tried a lot of times. And Lissandra does match in some ways in terms of LeBlanc hits 6 and has the most kill pressure, and she's either able to initiate a counter gank or just self-ult and not die. But she's so short range, and LeBlanc has such an effective threat range with just even the tether and how much damage the junglers do, that she just has so much power as a pick. And you kind of trying to rack your brain for things that people have used in the past against LeBlanc. You think of things like Syndra, of course, and Cassiopeia sometimes. All these picks are feeling more and more tertiary where the meta is, and just given the headaches around it, it's either going to be perma-banned, or I think maybe teams will try to trade it and just eke out one win against it to try to tip the balance of a best of 5.
Well, the biggest advantage for me for LeBlanc is that unlike a lot of these other assassins, she has so much versatility in either being able to set up a gank when her jungler is there or avoid ganks because she doesn't have to use that distortion like if they're not if the jungler hasn't been tracked, right? So I just feel like she works best with and against junglers, and the junglers have been so important, just ganking more often than we have seen in any other worlds. The earliest first bloods, the most frequency of ganks, and Lissandra can, if it's an isolated 1v1 and there's no junglers, push the minion wave, and have this big AoE and be able to, get pressure like this and slowly get some, CS lead. But the fact that the chain, like you're talking about the tether range, you can't
more than flash, baby.
You can't even flash out of it, and like it'll still connect there. And then after you're rooted for something like a Lee Sin Q to come in, or any sort of these follow-ups. That's why it really does feel like LeBlanc's advantage is that she has so many options.
And also, again, consider what's around the LeBlanc in the meta right now. The junglers do a lot of damage. Xin Zhao, for example, very reliable damage. If that tether hits, Lee Sin's hitting the Q, and that's fine there. Top laners are squishy as well. There's no top lane tanks. There's so many people who are susceptible to LeBlanc, and if LeBlanc goes top lane, gets that kill, the turret goes down, everything falls into place, and then your lane assignment with LeBlanc around the flexibility you're alluding to is kind of wherever you need her. Like, she does provide something everywhere. She has instant wave clear with her RW now with the change. So given all of that, why not LeBlanc is kind of the thing we're falling into.
I would say I'd be super excited to see things like LeBlanc versus Aurelia, because Aurelia can definitely solo kill LeBlanc as well.
What are the solo queue picks here? Because I think we've had a
So,
new pick every round.
Malzahar is a pick, but I don't think either of these guys will put themselves on Malzahar.
What about Zed? Because Zed versus LeBlanc used to work pretty well.
It's true, but stopwatches on literally every
I
champion
agree.
nowadays.
I'm just saying we need to think ahead here because you know, the Victor kind of took us off guard, right?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing other stuff come up in the semis, the Victor tri-player.
So
I mean,
if we're trying to like
Cassin, if you're trying to, but it's like the game's too fast.
And we've already seen Kuro try that. It definitely should go better than Kuro was going on, but
Kuro played very bad.
he was very bad.
Blew
Agreed.
Flash
Agreed.
like level
He was
2,
very scared.
maybe even level 1, and then got
I'm not defending.
yeah. So I think Cassidy, like you're saying, that is a possibility to try and scale.
But is the game
scale
still
for later?
going?
If we're trying to throw out random picks, that we might see that we haven't seen,
Give us Kobe.
I still want to see some Fizz. Fizz is an assassin that I think is viable right now that we haven't seen a lot of. So maybe the champ select, the bans start to pile up enough that we get to see something like that. But I do think Fizz in his current state is definitely viable and could throw his hat into the ring there as far as the rest of the assassins that we're seeing, because he is very good at taking down most other assassins. A lot of it has to do with the way his ultimate works and being able to land. As soon as you have that on someone, like LeBlanc, you're not going to lose the vision. You're not going to, you go all in, and the burst damage is mostly there.
And the buffed point blank damage, right? So you can actually just queue into ult, and do the point blank ult, and that actually got buffed a while ago. So that is definitely a good one. I definitely do agree, though, that the best solo queue is Malzahar, but I don't see these guys as Malzahar picks.
Yeah,
Crown's gone.
I also think, though, that as much as we're talking about the Lissandra thing, not working out as well, Jensen was still 20, 30 CS ahead with them getting that kill, with with Broxah coming in and being able to gank and pressure him much more heavily than Sven Skaren was able to be involved.
True.
And Rookie, I think, has certainly shown he has played better than Jensen. If you can play well around it, Rookie has played 3 Lissandra games at Worlds. They all looked pretty strong. I do think you can just answer with the Lissandra still. I think that there is a lot of ways for LeBlanc at the highest levels to be successful because the skill cap on this champion is just immense. But that being said, it's still, I think, not an easy matchup into Lissandra. And if you have a jungle that can play heavily around mid lane and wants to play heavily around mid lane, as I think IG is going to try to do in this series, to try to counteract Fnatic's roams of Fnatic attacking there, as we saw in the previous matchups, then I think it's totally reasonable to go for a Lissandra and try to go for something like a Lee Sin or a Xin Zhao and be sitting around mid lane. Because if that LeBlanc doesn't get those kills, if that LeBlanc does get locked on a turret and you have to go into the team fight stage, I think that is where it becomes much more difficult to execute on those plays. And yes, certainly there are opportunities if you can get vision and come from behind and these sorts of things, but if you don't have that lead, if you don't have that advantage, I think it's so difficult to team fight into stuff like Lissandra.
It's true. And so here's what we know. We've been hyping the Rookie Caps matchup since before the tournament. It delivered in the group stage, but coming into the semifinals, we were actually saying the 2 best performing mid lanes at Worlds were Rookie and Perks. Rookie smashed Perks, and I do feel like Caps had a resurgence, so to speak, in the semifinals, kind of regained a lot of the reputation with how well he performed. So again, it's going to be that showdown. And the last time they met, we talked so much about red side and red side counterpick. And now we're seeing Aurelia, Akali, LeBlanc as all potential first picks that could go mid lane. Do we have any indication on which ones we'd want to see, which ones we should see, which team should pick red side versus blue side? Because these are decisions that Fnatic and IG have to figure out in the next few days.
I think we need to rewind, though, because, again, we were talking about candidates to, Rookie X, for example.
Yeah.
Rookie's always been in this discussion for top 2. I feel like every mid laner that's run into Rookie has been outclassed in the 1v1. Yes, Fnatic were able to win around it, but that's the ultimate. If you just look at the post-game thread and you look at the CS numbers and the kills, you're like, oh, wow, he won the matchup. But you go back and watch the VODs, 30, 40 CS, like Azale was talking about earlier, is the lead there. The only time where I've felt like Rookie didn't have agency both over his matchup and also in terms of getting the roam off were the 2 Urgot games that UCal played, which is a complete negating pick, right? We've had anti-carry as a meme.
Cowl.
Exactly. As negating as possible. Urgot with Cal, he can push, he doesn't die. against LeBlanc, it sounds a bit
There
terrifying
was
with the tether.
one other time, the tiebreaker match when Fnatic first picked Akali against his LeBlanc. Actually, the Akali won the lane.
But he was down CS.
30 or 40 CS, and he got a 1v2 kill.
Yes, I watched through the VODs just before he came on.
He,
so.
he was like the Fnatic
Akali
did
like
play really well
snowballed
around
through
it. And yeah, exactly. And Akali got to the point where she was definitely winning, but in the lane, she got slammed.
And that's kind of the thing we're seeing here is like Rookie has, I think, been uniquely good in the mid lane. I think this is easily his tournament if we're going to award a mid laner. And how do you approach that reality? If every candidate, including Caps in particular, has already had the struggles, do you throw in the towel in some ways and find a negating pick and try to deal with that? Or are you actually saying, okay, he's coming off a very strong performance in the semifinals, take the skill matchup again and rely on Broxah to be ahead? Because if Broxah falls behind compared to Ning, which did not happen in the group stage, but let's think of a different world where Broxah's shut down like he was against Haro, and you take a skill matchup, that feels very IG and Rookie favored. If you take a negating pick and jungle falls behind, at least you're saying self-contained, I can survive through. And that mindset, and even just how you approach game one with that kind of a, feels like almost like Russian roulette thing going on, is very interesting.
Also, you bringing up the if you're going to choose red or blue side,
Right.
made me think of something I was thinking about earlier when we were casting the semifinals. Is when you're choosing side selection, you also now, I think more than previously, have to take into account how it does actually lay out the top lane. Because because top lane matchups right now are so, snowbally and are going to be a lot of carry champions. On blue side, you do have more protection from the way that the map is actually laid out. Red side has to deal with the tri-brush being behind them at all times. And we saw this a couple times where, junglers have multiple paths up there. They can go through the pit, behind the pit, through the enemy jungler. And so it does feel like, especially if you're taking volatile matchups, whereas previously I was like, red side, blue side, we have a lot of tanks up there. It's a factor, but it's not as big. Now I think in addition to it playing into how you're going to pull off your champion select strategy, then you have to be like, okay, well, if we end up with this top lane matchup, am I going to have this wall at my back, or am I going to have to take into account, all right, my jungler is going to need to do, X warding path to be able to secure that for me as well. Just is another layer.
I agree. And it's why red side mid lane counterpick is more valuable than red side top lane counterpick. And with how much flex picks are being used, you can make the biggest example of this was game 3 yesterday, where the top lane and mid lane were literally just swapping back and forth until 20 seconds, which is as long as they can go, but without swapping back.
Is that the first time that's ever happened, by the way?
That much swapping, I feel like.
Because they went down to the timeline.
Yeah.
There. For people that don't know, they have a rule that at 20 seconds, you're locked in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're forced into the matchup.
Crazy how, and all these guys, especially top lane and mid lane, can play a huge amount of champions. It does, I think, increase the value of blue side with your point there, with how many flex picks there are as well, because it's like you're not truly getting as counterpicked if you're picking flexible mid top, right? Because you can swap into the slightly more favorable matchup top lane if you really want to, and then still have the blue side top lane advantage.
And red side's advantage in the past was around stopping a Baron being taken, because red side was most able to put wards over the wall to just burst from behind the wall and try to contest the Baron with like a Hylissang or come over the wall. But the problem right now is because there's no tanks to face check and contest vision, if you fall behind in vision, you kind of get blown up. And if you try and contest Baron, you kind of get blown up. We're seeing so few Baron steals in this tournament because teams are both getting smarter about the macro around it, but also having 2 or 3 people that, have that almost stat check moment where they say, well, if you walk up to me, I'm going to kill you. And because of that, because red side can't just repel the Baron as kind of a thing and extend the game, it does feel like that blue side quirk of the map is kind of being accentuated right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bot lane with Jackie and Baolan versus Rekkles and Hilly. What's interesting to me about Fnatic, at least, is I do kind of feel like this is the perfect meta for Rekkles. Previously,
Sivir, baby.
Previously, a lot of the criticisms of Rekkles was, he doesn't really take over the early game. Like, you build completely around Rekkles. You're putting too much pressure on him, or he's too passive. But that's exactly what you want out of an AD carry this tournament. You want a guy that you don't have to give jungle attention to. He's actually still been up in CS on average across the entire tournament, one of the best CSDs. And then he's able to offer the utility picks in the end. And Jackie, I feel like, has had more highlight moments for sure, especially with his flash forward against KT Rolster in the quarterfinals, but has been much less consistent, especially in their losses against Fnatic at the end of the group stage. So, Azael, what are your thoughts on the Baolan matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I think it's, it's kind of like high variance versus consistency. And Rekkles in his interviews has talked pretty heavily about that. He's been talking about how, oh yeah, like I think we're going to win because, he was talking about all the ADs and all the bot lanes in the semifinals. And he's saying, I don't make mistakes. Like I'm the consistent player. Like I think that they're going to kind of like mess up and I'm going to capitalize on that. And, even in that flash forward play that you're talking about, like right before that, he wasted his ultimate because he had like if I recall correctly, 3 stacks of Braum passive on him. And he kind of just like walked forward and then was like, oh shit, I got to use this. And then, like it's kind of risk versus reward. And I think like the style that Rekkles is playing, if you were IG, that is the style of bot lane you would want when you have the 2 best solo laners in the tournament, right? So it's kind of like they don't really have exactly what they want for this meta where your solo laners are so dominant. If you have a volatile bot lane that is trying to fight and is trying to get advantages, your jungle kind of needs to be down there playing around it, which is pulling attention away from what I think is their strongest point in the map. And I think that the style that Rekkles is playing, and even like his proclivities of how he builds, like build attack speed early, push in the wave. Like that is the best style for focusing on the solo lanes as well. So I do think that Fnatic is very well suited for that. And if he has the push with like, Sivir and early Zerkagreaves and all this sort of stuff, it's also unlocking Hylissang to pressure mid lane. So, certainly we saw them, I think, have the advantage in the previous series. I'll be interested to see if IG can kind of change that up by playing maybe a more aggressive pick to try to, pressure or punish Rekkles and Hylissang.
I think it's even more extreme than you guys are setting it up with. Rekkles consistently stomped JackeyLove. Like he actually was Tristana and stomped on JackeyLove and would kill him in 1v1. Like
JackeyLove kill himself at Rekkles.
JackeyLove would like walk near him and Rekkles would be like, I see you. Like if I was Rekkles, I mean, Rekkles has already shown he's super confident, right? But I think specifically into this bottom lane, he is going to be very confident. And him and Hylissang have played extremely well. I think them together deserve a lot of the credit as far as Hylissang, especially with, like Rakan setting up a lot of these plays. So the bottom lane, I think, for Fnatic is definitely going to be a big point of power that they can try and leverage. The question of will it be so confident that you have overconfidence and make a mistake yourself? I don't think that's the type
it's not their
of
style,
player
right?
he is. So that's why even that like cautionary tale doesn't come quite as much into it for me.
If I want to take the scientific method, I'm actually way more on your side in that if you just stare at specifically those 2 matches in a row, the last game of group stage into tiebreaker, you look at that and say, Fnatic will win because of bot lane difference. You're ready to say that. You're like, okay, if this is all I'm looking at, you have to say that because I think Jackie and Baolan were kind of all over the place in that series, and Rekkles' champion pool's in a really good spot. I think Sivir might be the best AD carry at the tournament right now. The reason why I say that is there's so much threats that we've seen things like Kai'Sa fall away, because usually in the tank meta, there's tank top lane, there's a lot of things to apply to Plasma. That's a very nuanced point, but there's always a moment to Killer Instinct into the back line where there's only, say, a tank or a support and maybe one threat and be fine. But in this particular tournament, whenever we saw Boy try to Killer Instinct into the back line in quarterfinals, which of course drove him a lot of criticism, there were 3 different threats, including, say, a Xin Zhao or a Lissandra. Someone was always there to turn on him and do a lot of burst damage and kill him, compared to, say, MSI meta where Kai'Sa reigns supreme. You think of Sivir. Sivir stays out of threat range. She doesn't care about things like the Lissandra self ult, Alistar ult, things like that, because she's got Ricochet and can always just bounce things around. She'll always do damage, whereas Kai'Sa gets zoned out of damage. So given kind of what's going on in the bot lane, you say, okay, they beat them very cleanly through bot lane difference twice in a row, and now you're saying this as well. You can say that the jungle matchup will go a bit even, and you still think bot lane difference might be the Fnatic prediction. But we did see a shift from IG's bot lane after the fact. After they got slammed against Rekkles twice, if you just judge based on quarterfinal and semifinal, so you control for the matchup, I think they made a lot of adjustments there. JackeyLove was away from the Kai'Sa mostly. I thought in general he was cleaner. The clutch moment, I'm going to just leave to one side because it was a clutch moment, a clutch flash that's pulled off. And there's another world where that doesn't get pulled off and they lose that game. But I think in general, they've figured out the bot lane meta a lot more cleanly. They're not opting into the same sort of mistakes. They're not going to play Kai'Sa-based comps. There may be a Kai'Sa in a comp, but it's not going to be around Galio and just Kai'Sa in the late game being the carry. And because of that, I think the adaptations from the bot lane are the patchwork that could lead to an IG success. If the bot lane can match, suddenly we have a huge firecracker of a 5-game series. But if the bot lane is run over, then it's going to be a Fnatic comfortable victory.
You know what I want to see, and this isn't necessarily unique to either Jackey or Rekkles, but if these teams are early picking tankless compositions, like we saw Fnatic do when they first rotation the LeBlanc and the Victor before the second ban phase, I want to see lethality Varus, because that thing got completely pushed out when there were no tanks. It has a strong laning phase. It is actually good against... We've seen it good against LeBlanc. You land one charged up Q in mid game, you take half of LeBlanc's health. She can no longer dash in and assassinate again. I don't know if we'll see it because it's quite a departure from the meta we've seen, and it is still potentially high risk because it's low mobility.
Yeah, susceptible to assassin.
You're so far away. Like, we've seen it as a mid lane pick even when tanks weren't that big, and I think it could actually work in the bottom lane. I just don't think someone's going to pull it out.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the main reasons we won't see it is that you have to be so confident if you're playing a marksman that does not have a dash or
versus Aurelia
in a world where Aurelia, Akali, LeBlanc, Lissandra, like all this stuff is flying around.
Yeah,
I do think it can work.
If you stay safe, it'll look good.
Yeah, I think it will slam or be slammed.
Yeah.
You have to be so confident in that. You have to be like, I always think of Ruler, because when we were watching the like Gauntlet run, and he would point blank, keep landing Varus ultimates on Rakan, like standing right in front of his face with the ultimate charging, trying to get the knock-up charge on him, and he seemed like very like nerves of steel situation. But yeah, I don't know if there's if that type of switch is actually going to come through.
And then you think of the cohorts here, the supports between Baolan and Hylissang. Gotta say, Hylissang has had a really good tournament.
Yeah.
This Worlds. His Braum, specifically in the Fnatic IG games where he roamed to mid and was the jungler when Broxah could influence the matchup, he came in with Braum ganks, which is not usually a thing you think about. Alistar's usually the one doing that, but he found the roam timings there. I think Hylissang has been really on point. He's definitely a player that I think has some up and downs domestically, but his Worlds has been really high caliber. Meanwhile, Baolan has mostly been good, but the Rakan games are definitely the ones that really...
They were exceptional.
The exceptional tier. I would say overall, Hylissang has been better.
Yeah, I think he's been super good with having a very offensive orientation to his mind as far as the support, right? A lot of support players, across various metas have had very defensive mindsets.
How do I keep my guy safe?
But yeah, I think Hylissang, one of the things he does best is look for those opportunities. And if we're throwing out these, picks that may not be that likely, but we want to see, I'm thinking of offensive support picks. I'm thinking of Pyke.
He wants a Pyke World skin for sure.
Yeah, so you got to get one game.
Exactly.
In, right?
Do you have
If
to
someone's
play it?
banned
Is that a rule?
against you,
Yes.
if someone's
Is that a
banned
rule?
against you, does that count? Because someone did ban it against him early
So
on.
Haru played only Ezreal, and I believe he had to have Ezreal as his skin. So
yeah. I
think
didn't
you
know if
have
that
to
was
play it.
actually an official rule or not.
Yeah,
The world skin rulebook.
I mean, Pyke would be so cool. When you go
Yeah,
when
I
you do
know.
the ultimate, you're stamping Fnatic on their head. When you go on deep water dive, you could have your logo swirling around you and stuff.
I think to get a commemorative world skin, it's fitting that you actually play it in your world championship run.
No, it makes sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense. I just didn't know if it was a real rule.
Do you want it bad enough that if you're up 2-0 in the finals, you're like,
No,
But the money.
no,
I do 2-0. Hell yeah.
never in 1,000 years.
I also
you gotta
think
get a good argument prepared in your head for the coach.
No, I'm like,
oh yeah, it could really work here.
Alistair, you can
even if my coach told me to, I'd be like, nah, dog. I'm trying to win. I don't care.
You trick the coach into doing it.
You mislead the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm saying, as the player, I still wouldn't want to do it. I'd be like, all right, well, I'm getting a Malphite skin this year, but I'm going to have a skin. It's going to be in the game.
Okay, we talked about every single matchup. I think it's time to talk about who will be the 2018 world champion, Fnatic or IG. I think we talked about soul lanes. You're willing to give, like if we're doing a report card, I'm giving top lane and mid lane edges to IG, and I'm giving jungle AD and support edges to Fnatic. But as we talked about, one little thing changes in any of these matchups actually, and it could actually be enough to swing the matchup entirely. If IG's bottom lane dominates, right? If Caps or Bwipo pull out big, if Broxah dominates the jungle, like so many of those things can switch.
Since you brought up scientific method earlier, one of the hard things about making predictions is you cannot actually apply the scientific method.
You can try though, Kobe.
And
then you can get every prediction wrong.
Because there's so many confounding variables that we cannot hold the same. But that's what makes it exciting, right? Trying to play it out in your head, trying to come up with whatever your highest percentage is, or even, trying to predict the upset.
And we are, 6 days out from the final, 5 days out from the final.
Yeah,
So
we have more VODs to watch.
incomplete thoughts right now.
This is less than 24 hours after the conclusion of the last semifinal. Want to get the finals episode out the door as quick as possible. But what are first impressions? You don't even have to hold to your predictions by the time the final comes around.
For me, I am thinking like, because I felt like the way in which Fnatic beat IG last time was something that I felt IG showed a better response to, in their playoff run. I do favor them, but it's slightly, because I think that, Fnatic has shown that they can play obviously certain different ways. And, me looking at it as, okay, I'm looking at it through the lens of, if everything else is kind of the same, if the soul laners are winning as they did against Fnatic last time, and IG are able to protect those soul laners, then that should be IG's path to victory. But that's a big if, and that's why it's not like a confident prediction. It's a 3-2 at best, because Caps certainly has the potential to beat Rookie, and we haven't seen what it looks like if Caps gets the counter pick, if Caps isn't blind picking, which could also really change the series. But I do think that IG showed that they know how to better protect their mid lane, when they played against G2, when they played against KT as well. And that to me is kind of what could be their edge, because I do think they have the stronger soul laners. But if Fnatic is still able to influence that, or just Broxah significantly outperforming Ning as he did before, Fnatic can easily win this. So this is honestly one of the hardest ones I've actually seen to kind of have a strong feeling one way or the other.
What's your guess?
I would say IG 3-2, but I think it could easily be a Fnatic 3-2. And if Fnatic shuts down like all mid lane attempts, or rather is able to continue those and shut down like IG from kind of affecting those lanes, or if Caps is just beating Rookie 1v1, then I think all of a sudden the series could look very one-sided for Fnatic.
It's really tricky. I think people coming in with confident predictions here are really kind of hoping. They're really putting too much into one variable. The way I look at it is, I think if you think back to how they matched up on that last day, and you see JackeyLove and Baolan match their performance from quarters and semis, I think it becomes a 5-game series basically instantly. And then the jungle is the wild card. That is, again, I want to give to the side of Broxah, because he's been outstanding this tournament. But Ning was really second to him there. So I feel like with just say a 20% increase across those three roles, I see IG winning 3-2, but it's such a what-if prediction. There's so little to work with. I feel like I learned more about IG in their victory over KT and more about Fnatic in their semifinal, which might sound surprising, but I think Fnatic in general just showed some really solid play around them that I think IG can't match. I think IG have a very good read on the meta. I think IG and Fnatic have had the best reads in the meta, so it's a treat to see them both in the final here. But I feel like IG... I really do feel like Rookie will be the difference between these two teams, and that's not to downplay Caps at all. I just feel like he's such a handful to deal with, and that no team has really gotten under his skin, barring going a full tank in the mid lane, and I don't think that's going to be Caps' style. I think he needs to be out there flexing. He needs to have the confidence in himself and in his team to take it to Rookie, and because of that, just the tournament Rookie's having, I would, again, actually follow Azael and say 3-2 IG, but I just need to start looking for real small things. It almost feels like I need to find inspiration to have a confident prediction here, because there's not much to pick between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, if we look at the previous matchups that they had in group stage, these two teams being in the same group was incredibly exciting to watch. And we were actually talking when we were watching the end of the group stage and the tiebreakers. We were like, wow, we got back-to-back games of this matchup. Let's get a best of 5. I wish we were going to have a best of 5 of this.
Yeah, too bad they can't meet until the finals.
Turns out we get our present, a couple of weeks later, because you can see so many different areas for improvement from the individual players. And the fact that more things have been shown in this extra week of semifinals, with Victor coming to the top a lot too, changing a lot of champion select, with Jace being such an incredible flex pick for IG, having the possibility of either of their solo laners having a very, very oppressive early game.
It's not a flex, but they both pop off on it as if it's their best picks.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, well, if there's an IG Jace skin, what's your immediate reaction? Is that the Shy skin or is that a Ricky skin? But because of these extra iterations that we've seen, it does make it so much more interesting to try and go over. And I'm still waffling back and forth.
If it's a 4-game series, I think Fnatic win it. That's kind of the weird thing in my head.
So here's one thing that often
Rookie has been so good.
That often off air we analysts kind of lament about predictions is a lot of times 3-2 is your prediction when you say this is a very difficult one to call. So we're almost using the series score as how close we feel like it is. Yeah. But when you actually get on the rift, like if you're really trying to get the exact number, you're probably better off going 3-0 or 3-1 because something will click in the series, and very rarely do you get that mid-series adaptation which keeps it even enough to get to a 2-1 and then not have the team actually win the 4th game to actually push you to 5 and then still get the predictions. So I think like with your 3-2 predictions, not to put words in your mouth, you're doing that because you think the teams are closely matched.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things that's like you're making the prediction because you think they're closely matched and because this is the information that I have given. And it's also one of those things where sometimes I'll make a prediction, I'll be like, I think this team's gonna win 3-1 because they're gonna do this and then this, and then I see champion select, I'm like, well now I think they're gonna lose 3-0, and like it's conditional approach because we are not inside their mind. Like if Caps could come and tell me he's like, well I'm gonna play Urgot and rush Cal every single game, then maybe my prediction changes, right?
Yeah.
Kobe,
all right,
now is the time.
Enough crying, analysts.
Now
you're the one who can't even make a prediction. I took like 10 minutes last episode.
There's one example where the 3-2 was actually a very real reflection of the series. Was Rock's SKT 2016 semis when the misfortune tech.
Man, I was just going to talk about
I'm sorry, Kobe. I can't read your mind just yet. But that's the one time where you saw adaptation be the reason for a victory.
Yeah.
But this one's
I really hope we get something like that. And something like that from a solo lane. Like a new...
Let's play a game. If it's a 3-0, who do you think wins? If I've told you our final was 3-0.
If it's a 3-0, I think IG wins.
I agree.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. Because that feels like, solo lane stomped you every game.
And I think they were early game wins too, where you're like, there's like 5 kills really quickly, and you're like, oh my god, these split pushers.
Okay, then I told you it's a 3-1.
I don't like this game. I want to make my prediction.
Okay, make your prediction then. Make it. No one's stopping you.
Who wins, Kobe? So what about back to my game?
Your game.
Is there a time limit here?
Okay.
Is there?
Kobe loses.
Does he get a lifeline?
No.
Phone a friend. What did you say?
Honestly, it's probably because I am so biased for Broxah, but I think that Fnatic are gonna win.
What would the score?
I would go with a 3-2.
Okay.
Kind of as you were trying to get to a point about IG winning in solo lane smashing sort of way. I just feel like Broxah is going to have so many chances to make corrections, and I have the faith in him to do that. Whereas Ning, you guys are talking about, I'm not quite sure even if there is a bad game for IG where early game goes out the window in large part because of jungle. I don't have the same faith that there's going to be a quick correction on his side. Whereas, Rookie has had these amazing games. He gets counterpick. He smashes his lane. He roams like he's another jungler for the team and controls the side lanes. Is one of the things that's making it kind of difficult for me. But I think I am going to stick with the Fnatic 3-2 as of right now.
Boom.
We do have a lot more volume.
Oh, we do.
To review, but let's go on to Jack.
My question for you would be, I also agree Broxah is better. Do you think, though, that Ning has the easier job? given that he has perhaps sole lane advantage?
I have an answer.
Mm,
I think Ning has a harder job
Okay.
because he has 3 lanes that play without restraint. So it's actually impossible for him to like always know where the right spot is going to be, where Broxah has a higher chance of having an early game plan that he can actually follow.
well, I mean, they can talk to each other and maybe coordinate that.
Oh, actually, you say that, but TheShy does not speak great Mandarin.
Rookie can translate.
Oh yeah, because you really want to be translating between your jungler and mid laner while you're focusing on laning against Caps.
Watch also.
I'm sure he can say "come top."
Well, I can just see it now.
It's a nuance.
Ning is
Top now.
Ning is like, hey Shy, do you want to gank right now? And Rookie's like, oh, let me translate that. Hey Shy, Ning says he can't gank for you. He has to can't hit.
So Fnatic 3-0, but really, my prediction in this one, with everything being prefaced, would be IG 3-1. I think if Fnatic wins, it's because they are more adaptable, they can play more styles, and they have better communication. And that's how they were kind of able to beat IG at the end of the group stage. But I do think IG has evolved a little bit since then, and the way that the priority picks have changed, I think favors IG a little bit more. I still can't get over how good TheShy was in semifinals, and I actually think it'll be IG 3-1 with TheShy winning finals MVP.
But the crazy thing is, if you ask me who the best team in terms of like just pure like looking at gameplay, like some sort
It's
of
Fnatic.
like, if you had
They're 12 and
to, like,
2.
it'd be Fnatic. Just because again, they've never got snowboard on. They've always been competitive. They've just looked really clean, and that's why I have this kind of weird thing where I'm trying to grasp why IG is
Because the semifinals was so insane.
So
Sure.
one thing though,
But I'm trying to control for that, but I'm still being like those solo lanes, you know.
one of my biggest doubts though, is their match with EDG. That series showed a disorganized Fnatic.
And Scout was outperforming Caps in that series as well.
Yeah, and I think Rekkles actually referred to it in his interview a little bit afterwards. Of
He said they played badly, but they still won.
yeah, but he also mentioned how specifically he felt like even when an opponent team would make a play on one side of the map, usually Fnatic are very good at recognizing their possible counterplay. Whether it is setting up a defense there or making a play on the other side of the map, that was really not on display. And that was probably their maybe messiest games that we've seen the World Championship. So that gives a little bit pause. But it's just definitely a sticky one.
Okay. Any final changes to predictions after everything?
Nope.
We got 3-2 IG, 3-2 IG, 3-2 Fnatic, and I'm 3-1
3-1.
IG. You know people are just going to latch onto that, and that's your prediction forever now. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still feel confident. Like I'm not sad if that happens because
it's an awesome 5-game series.
I can also construct an argument for Fnatic based on everything that's happened, right? If even
it's not weird to pick Fnatic at all.
if IG have TheShy does take over, Rookie does take over, and they make the finals one-sided.
Yeah.
I still, with the stuff that we've seen, feel fine.
Yeah, I mean, just point
constructing an
to that
argument
through the 3-game series that they already played, essentially, right? Like we have seen how they can win because we saw how they won, right? Like, yes, there can be changes. Yes, it could look very different in the finals, but definitely going to be a really exciting one.
Yeah, one topic I want to hit on now that we're done with the finals predictions is a bigger picture Worlds conversation, kind of about how we expect this Worlds to be remembered. Because Korea had won 5 years in a row. It had been Korea versus Korea in the finals 3 consecutive years. Is this going to be the beginning of LPL dominance? Is it going to be the start of a new era? Is Korea ever going to become the same dominant force that they have been for the past 5 years? Like, I'll start with you, Papasmithy, because you cast every LCK game this year, right? You've clearly watched Korea win 5 straight world championships. Are people going to see this as the beginning of LCK falling? Or is it going to be, oh, actually, they just came in with the wrong read on the meta and they jump back next year and are just the same?
Definitely the hindsight prediction that can easily look very foolish in a year's time. But I think when it comes to the playstyle, clearly that proved to be a problem, right? Korea was once again going risk averse, and I think there was a great translated interview with Cloud Templar, or at least some stream comments where he talked about the fact that previously go for the low risk, medium reward choice at every moment because that's the reliable way. We've crunched all the scrims, we've done all the blocks, that's the way to go. And that wasn't this world. This world was much more about medium to high risk and a massive payoff and potential game ender from there. And that was a meta read, and that's something that can change. Like there's some very mechanically gifted players in Korea that can adapt their styles, and I don't think that will happen again. But when you're getting more lofty about what it means in terms of the future, I think resetting up a period of dominance, a 5-year period of dominance here is something that I think will be too tricky to get away, because while part of it was Korea fit the playstyle the best and in some cases had the best players and best coaches, there was also a psychological element to it. There was a bit of defeatism that other regions had about their chances. And in a year where Korea won nothing, apart from the LCK, and you just have to, like, yes, we won out the best region.
Yeah.
You can always hold on to that.
Woo!
We've done that in NA
World
for a while
Series,
here.
baby.
Like,
But
SK still never won NALCS.
I think the floodgates are open for optimism everywhere, and that's a good thing for League of Legends.
Yeah.
Now everyone, including North America, sits back and says, we could have won Worlds.
Yeah.
A couple of things go differently and things could have happened. And that's definitely something that won't go away quickly. That would need to be beaten down multiple years in a row. And I need to know what happens in the offseason here. Because I think if the rosters stay the same in Korea, which it doesn't sound like they will, but I think if you look at this as an anomaly as Korea and say, all right, well, we lost this one, it was a meta read, whatever, let's just do it again, I think they will just find similar pitfalls that will dog them. But if they are demonized by this, if they look at this and say, no, we will never have another year like this, and holistically approach it on many different levels. We're talking players, squads, even coaching approaches to flexibility to throw out the old and really push forward with the new, then there can be change. But if money on the table, do I think there'll be another period of dominance from Korea? I would say no. And I think that China, with so many things in their core in terms of interest in the game and also player base, and also just now tangibly feeling success, and we don't know about the World Championship, but plenty of success around that. I think if you want the smart money is that will it be an LPL era of dominance like the LCK? Maybe not, but will it be LPL as big favorites more often than not? Then yes.
Yeah, and I think that the LPL is here to stay. I don't know if this is going to be the beginning of LPL dominance, and I agree with you that I don't think the 5 years of Korean reign could be replicated by 5 years of LPL reign. And to specifically talk about how I think Korea will bounce back to a point, in previous years when the LCK has come in with what we'd call a bad meta read, I feel like it was adjustable in the fact that the bad meta read was, we didn't quite know how the lane swapping was going to play out, and we weren't protecting enough against level 3 dives. So now we are going
Let's
to
make it
protect
more
against
defensive.
level 3 dives, right? And they correct. But, and this is similar to why I think RNG failed. You spend a whole year or two practicing the way you lane to set up your mid game. Xiaohu, 2 years ago, was a spectacular laner, right? He could generate his own advantages. He could generate solo kills, but he played, I feel like, this entire year to shove mid, neutralize until team fights, and assist bot lane. And when you then have a guy like Caps or Rookie come in who's actually been playing 4 solo kills the whole year and has practiced that style, that's not something you can actually switch in a week of adjusting to the meta. So, like you say, if Korea adjusts to that, I think they'll be able to compete. I think they'll potentially even be a favorite if that happens. But again, I do feel like because the mental block is also removed, the floodgates are open.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a mindset thing, right? It's very hard to change your mindset of what is a good play and what is a bad play, within a world championship. If it's like, it turns out Camille was pretty good. Well, I know how to play Camille. I can start playing it now. But if it's like, it turns out the way I think about League of Legends is wrong, then that's like very hard to reevaluate, right? It's like, okay, you only ever go for a trade if you know their jungler's on the bottom side, versus IG is like, no, you trade always, and the jungler can only be one of 3 places. And you win the trades in the other lanes, right? Like, it's just a different mindset, and that is very hard to adapt to. But speaking of off-season, I also look to game changes, right? Like, game changes are massive, and that dictates a ton of it as well, right? Like, are we staying in a world where Baron is easier to attack and easy to take, or are some of the changes coming through making the game favor a more defensive playstyle or re-adding more vision, right? Like, we don't know where the game is going to go, and that's always something that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, to answer the original question, I think this year will be remembered as the year where Korea broke. Like, they didn't win anything, right? RNG won everything for the beginning of the year. And then this Worlds was the Worlds of upsets where everyone else was able to rise up. So it wasn't just in isolation, this little Worlds meta that everyone's talking about. It isn't just, people are playing more aggressive now. RNG had already laid the groundwork for that story for this year. And up until this, I feel like this Worlds was more the like, this team fighting, bottom lane centric, type of thing isn't there. So I definitely think the time of Korean absolute dominance is over. I also think that Korea will do much better next year, will place higher in the World Championship. Teams like Griffin, specifically individual players like Viper, just looking at that one guy and his burst onto the scene, he is absolutely insane. Plays so many different champions. You talk about being able to adjust. This man plays actually every champion in professional play just this year.
Yeah.
And there is a lot more fresh talent, I think, in Korea as well. They're still exporting top players like Rookie and TheShy, right? Even though Rookie's been in the LPL for like 4 or 5 years or whatever by now.
He's actually going to lose his import restriction next year.
IG can get another import.
Yeah, if they really wanted to.
Regardless, I do think Korea will be strong again. But yeah, it's not going to be the oppressive, we're going to Worlds again this year. Which Korean team is it going to be?
And that's what I'm so excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited about actually having I feel refreshed after this World Championship, right? I think regionalism, just for the overall health of the esport, having some sort of regional diversity is really important, because if you're watching your regional NALCS, EULCS, LPL League all the time, it is hard to get excited about your success if every time you go to the World Championship, you're like, well, this whole year was useless because Korea has both teams in finals and they're clearly the best. Even the fact that it's just now murky creates such a better story coming into every international event, especially next year.
And that seed of doubt that you mentioned is the silver lining here. I know I just love watching great League of Legends, and you definitely had to reevaluate some of your parameters around that in this tournament, but we still come into the final and say the best two teams here are almost certainly there. You could argue maybe KT got a very rough draw in the end, but we started this tournament with two big favorites, KT and RNG. Neither of them made it there. But people kind of forget that the next three were Gen.G, which was definitely off, but IG and Fnatic were the other two. And we do have one of the, I guess you would call them a dark horse, but one of those semi or big favorites. They're both there in the final. They've played the best League of Legends. They've adapted to the meta best. And that does mean that the final should be a very worthy winner, whichever way it goes. And I agree with you. The aggressive correction is what we're going to learn about Korea, because a defensive correction around what is the latest meta trend and how can we counter it, we've seen always. Griffin and a couple of teams like KT have shown aggressive corrections, but you need to be able to do both to succeed. And we come into next year, and every number one seed in a big region, people are going to look at and say, well, how do they stack up? Who will win? And that will mean even just MSI, where we only get one of them, is going to be just fascinating to understand just which meta is the right one.
I think it's also really interesting thinking about like how people are now thinking about the game, coming into Worlds versus coming out of Worlds, right? And how that perhaps affects off-season changes and everything as well, not just in Korea, but everywhere else. Coming into it, we talked about bot lane focus. I certainly felt that bot lane was by far the most important, after having watched Uzi play, and RNG play that style for so long, and so much emphasis on getting this one man ahead and feeling like it goes to the team fights. And in the team fight, the bot laner is by far the most important. You protect him or you dive him, whatever you're doing. The fights are all about that.
Tank play is really important.
Exactly.
Lining.
And this has been, pretty much categorically disproven, right? And you can make the argument, oh, well, what if RNG won game 5? Then is this conversation the same? But it doesn't matter, because that's not the world in which we are living. And, it does really make you look at it, at some of these teams and think, okay, Well, you thought this team was pretty strong coming into Worlds. Do you think this team is pretty strong coming out of Worlds? Like when you think about a team like Team Liquid, okay, well, you won back-to-back NALCS championships. You dominated regionally. But is that the type of roster that you now think has the best chance in this new world? If your goal truly is international success, a team that has never been about really solo lane carries, has always been about the bottom lane. You can say Xiaohu, oh, well, he just has to change his playstyle. Look, 2 years ago at him dominating in lane, you can't necessarily say the same about some of the other teams and some of their players. And that maybe makes you reevaluate like what style of player you're even going after, which could make the offseason pretty crazy.
Any other final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Worlds is hype. Let's go. Finals.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. That's going to wrap up the Worlds edition of The Dive. Thank you, Papasmithy, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Sorry about the LCK, but it's still great to have you.
There's always next year.
Yeah, there's always next year. We are off to Korea. Oh, Kobe?
No, I just 100%. I think Korea will do better next year. So
Silver linings. I'm learning them. You guys have just trained me up ever since quarterfinals. I've learned how to deal with this.
I completely baited production because they've already
love
done the
an
pan out.
underdog.
We're going to Korea for the finals. Invictus Gaming versus Fnatic. You could say East versus West, or you could say EU versus LPL. It all starts Friday at 11:30.
They have a Canadian
PM
coach.
Pacific
NA all the way.
time. That's when the countdown starts. Check LOL Esports for your local time zone, though, because it can get confusing. We have an hour-long countdown before the before the opening ceremony, which will then be followed by the biggest match of the year, and we will see you there.
Hype, hype, hype.